I'm Dr. Pam Costa, and I teach psychology here at TCC. And I've been teaching here since 1995, so almost 20 years. And I teach introduction to psychology as well as abnormal psychology. I previously taught lifespan development, research methods. I currently also teach biopsychology. So I've taught the whole gamut of psych courses here. I also teach online, full online, as well as hybrid online and face-to-face, so across all modalities. I earned my Bachelor's of Science in Psychology at Loyola Marymount University, which is in Los Angeles. And right after that, in fact, the week after I graduated with my BS, I went right into the master's program because I love Loyola so much, and stayed there for a Master's of Arts in Counseling Psychology. While I was finishing my degree there, a week after graduating with my master's degree, I started teaching at Loyola because my supervisor, who I was a research assistant for, developed a cyst on her vocal cords. So she called me the first day of school and said, her partner called and said, go teach her classes. So fortunately, I had picked up a teaching credential, elementary school teaching credential, so I had taught third grade through graduate school, so I used my third grade teacher skills. And I just emulated my professors at Loyola and went in and acted like I was one of them and taught my first Psych 100 class, and then my second and my third and my fourth and my fifth, and developed the bug for college teaching just kind of by fire, that trial by fire. I thrown into a classroom of about 90 students. Most of them were on the Loyola basketball team at that time, which was exciting also. So I was going to their games and teaching them during the day, and that was fun. So I love student athletes as well. That's where I started my kind of enjoyment of having both running start and student athletes in my classroom. I like those populations too, and that probably was from Loyola days. Let's see, and because of my faculty mentors at Loyola, they basically said I can't stop at just the master's, and so especially if I wanted to keep teaching, so they encouraged me to continue on for a PhD, and I went up to Palo Alto, California, and finished my PhD through a program at Stanford University. And that PhD was in clinical psychology, where you're required, well, you're not required, but in order to be a licensed clinical psychologist, you have to do an internship at an American Psychological Association approved site. And Western State Hospital up here in Tacoma was one of the sites, along with all the VAs in the country. So for my pre-doc internship, I applied to 15 places, and Western State was one of my top choices, and I got it. And so sight unseen, moved to Tacoma, and that was going to be for 1 year in 1994. And that 1 year now has blossomed to 20 years later. Fell in love with the area, started teaching part-time at TCC, I got a full-time position at PLU. So I had the opportunity to work with both, of course, four-year school students at PLU, in addition to Loyola, but also at night I had the benefit of teaching TCC students Monday nights part-time, and I fell in love with the students here, and a full-time position came up, and I decided to leave PLU to teach here at TCC. So that was kind of both my academic and my professional career kind of melded into one for you. But the reason why I kept going was, to tell you the truth, because I was basically being kind of kicked in the butt by my faculty mentors, and just the faculty at Loyola, and then again at Stanford and so on, kept basically pushing me, you've got to go further, go further, go further. So I have them to attribute to what I've been able to do.
So what does your discipline care about and value?
Psychology cares about using science to describe, to explain, and predict all the variables that go into human behavior and mental process, so memory and information processing and perception and sensation. Those would be mental processes outside of more of the observable human behaviors. And so we employ the scientific method to gain further understanding of how human beings work and sometimes how we don't work so well. And sadly enough, for the last few hundred years, psychology is focused on the negative, on more psychopathology and the negative aspects of human functioning. And that's where, in the last 10 years, there's been some significant shift in our focus. And so now our research is starting to include more positive aspects of human behavior. So we value science, we value the scientific method. Of course, we've borrowed the tools from the biologists and the questions from the philosophers, and to continue our understanding in human behavior.
What is an important contribution of your discipline?
Oh, wow. There's so many. Important contribution. Basically, I would say, speaking from a kind of a clinical psychologist point of view and having worked in the field of, I've worked with people who suffer from chronic mental illness. So I would have to say the contribution from psychology would be the further understanding of improving the lives of people with chronic mental illness. That is psychology's niche. Understanding and improving and stabilizing people who are suffering from a whole wide variety of concerns, whether it be ADHD to schizophrenia to Alzheimer's disease. It's the psychologists that come up with the tools, the assessments, the way to evaluate these conditions to eventually, hopefully, make their lives better. But I personally think the most exciting area in the field is this new subfield that was developed by Martin Seligman from the University of Pittsburgh. He developed it about 30 years ago. He's finally getting recognition for his understanding and contribution to the literature in the field of positive psychology. And the cool thing about positive psychology is, for once in our history as a science, we're focusing on what promotes health, what promotes happiness, what contributes to the well-being of human beings.
What difficulty do you think students face when they come into an upper level course?
What I have seen after teaching for 25 years and having the luxury of having Psych 100 students who are just learning about psychology juxtaposed with students who have already had that prerequisite and now are going up into a 200 level class, perhaps the biggest gap in their skills is really understanding the difference between a popular source like Newsweek, Time Magazine, Psychology Today, popular source, not scientific at all, versus scholarly articles. It's very, very difficult to understand the differences between those two, and even more difficult to read a scholarly article from a journal and understand it. It's very hard to dissect and understand those. And once we get to a 200 level course, that is where the expectation is that students should be able to identify in the library, and then B, read and understand what they're reading in scientific writings as opposed to popular writings. And there tends to be a big gap in their knowledge, and there's a variety of reasons. We only have 10 weeks to cover so much material in Psych 100, and it's a different topic every week. And so understanding scientific methodology and journals and so on is sometimes left out of our curriculum, sadly enough. And so there's that big gap, and students coming in to 200 are expected to know it. But I kind of sit back and think, well, where are they learning this? There's that kind of vacuum of information. And so I would love to continue to rely on library resources. I've been relying heavily on LibGuides and so on, and our librarians through the new courses and so on, to help our students gain that experience and level of comfort. It's really kind of a real a daunting experience to be expected to understand a journal article. And after you do it numerous times and get comfortable with just the layout of the article as opposed to a popular source or a magazine, that comfort level, I would hope, is something that students can gain either before or at a very early time, like the first week of class before coming into Psych 220 or 200 or especially research methods, so that they're not so overwhelmed by some of the expectations for writing and reading. And so, two things. Number one, read. Read everything you can get your hands on, especially the textbook. That's helpful. But read all the material pertaining to the field of psychology that comes across your desk, because the 200 level classes are the focus is heavy on reading comprehension. So anything that you read in the summer or outside of class, it doesn't necessarily have to be the textbook, but in the newspaper, anything that you read gives you that practice and that experience with the language and the vocabulary related to psychology. So keep reading. Secondly, learn how to navigate the library. Learn how to navigate our library databases. Know how to find the database psych articles, which is the gold mine of scientific resources, that you will find all the resources at your fingertips right there in psych articles through the TCC library, even online. You don't even have to leave your house, where you will find all the resources you need for every psychology paper you will ever write. It's really incredible. I think it's incredible compared to the days that I used to carry my little bag of coins around to make photocopies in the basement of the UCLA library of these journal articles, and the journals were like 5 pounds each, and I would stand there breaking the backs of them, making photocopies to take home, with the parking meter running outside and everything else. It was awful. So I'm just absolutely enthralled with this one click and all these articles come up and then you print them right there in your pajamas at your house. It is so cool. So kind of like the analogy of walking to snow, in the snow to school. Students today have these accessible resources, so learn how to find scientific articles. Get comfortable reading, dissecting scientific articles, and know the difference between popular articles and scientific scholarly, articles that have come from a refereed journal. And once you get that down, you've accomplished 50% of the expectations of the course, really, because that's kind of the fundamental basis of most of the 200 level courses, your ability to decipher information and use critical thinking skills. That's really what we do in the 200 level courses. So those are my recommendations.